Ever stop and think about what really makes a leader? Or, how someone doesn't just see history happen, but actually changes its course?
It's a fascinating question.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into someone who absolutely fits that bill, Barack Obama. He's often described, I think rightly, as someone who didn't just make history, but really inspired millions. That message of hope and change, it really stuck.
It absolutely did. A powerful message.
So our goal here for you listening is to really pull out the key insights, the important nuggets from the materials we've looked at.
Right. We've got biographical notes, summaries of key moments, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Think of this as maybe your shortcut to getting a solid understanding of his path, the big challenges he faced, and the legacy he's left. Ready to jump in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the story really starts, according to our sources, from some pretty humble beginnings. Barack Hussein Obama II, born August 4th, 1961, Honolulu, Hawaii.
And a really unique family background, especially for that time.
Totally. Father from Kenya, mother from Kansas, and they split up when he was quite young.
Right, so he was raised mainly by his mother and grandparents.
Which must have meant, from a really young age, he was dealing with complex questions. Race, identity, belonging.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, being a biracial kid in 1960s America, you can only imagine.
How do you think those very early experiences, that sort of navigating different worlds, might have shaped his approach later on, especially, his focus on unity?
Well, I think it's almost impossible to overstate. Our material suggests it gave him this intrinsic understanding of different perspectives. It wasn't theoretical for him.
Right, he lived it.
Exactly. It's baked in this awareness, this need to bridge divides maybe, that became so central to his leadership style later. It really does make you think how much those formative years set the foundation.
That's a really good point. And that journey, that sort of forging of perspective, it continued through his education, didn't it?
It did. A significant academic path.
Yeah, Occidental College, then Columbia University, and eventually Harvard Law School.
And that's where something really noteworthy happened.
The Harvard Law Review presidency, our sources really highlight that first Black president.
Which was, of course, historically significant. But what's maybe even more telling about his leadership potential back then
What's that?
is how he likely got elected. The Law Review was, famously rigorous, lots of debate, strong opinions.
Sure. Intense intellectual environment.
Exactly. So to become president, especially then, suggests a real ability to build consensus, to manage complex arguments, to earn trust across different viewpoints. It was sort of a preview, wasn't it?
A microcosm of what was to come.
Interesting. But even before Harvard, there was something else pivotal, wasn't there? In his 20s.
Ah, yes. The community organizing in Chicago.
Right. Our material describes him really being on the ground, helping people in poor neighborhoods fight for better housing, better jobs.
Proper grassroots work.
Yeah. And it seems like this was where he really cemented that core belief. Change starts from the ground up. Absolutely pivotal. It's fascinating how that hands-on experience, working directly with communities, it wasn't just about policy points for him.
It was about people.
It was about empowering people. Understanding that real change often comes from those directly affected, not just dictated from the top. You can really see the roots of his later political thinking forming right there.
And that foundation, that belief in grassroots change, it clearly fueled his rise. I mean, we have to talk about the 2004 Democratic National Convention speech.
Oh, definitely. That was the moment for many people.
That line, there's not a liberal America and a conservative America, there's the United States of America, it just electrified people.
It really did. It catapulted him. Suddenly, he wasn't just a state senator from Illinois. He was a national figure.
And just 4 years later, 2008, he's running for president. The message, yes, we can.
A message that resonated incredibly deeply at that moment.
And then the historic result, January 20th, 2009. Barack Obama becomes the 44th president, the first African-American president.
A truly watershed moment.
Thinking about that speech, the campaign slogan, the election itself, what did that whole sequence do? How did it shift things for the country, do you think?
Well, that message of unity, that 2004 line, it offered something different, didn't it? An alternative to what felt like deep division.
Yeah, it felt like people were hungry for that.
Exactly. And yes, we can. It wasn't just catchy. It tapped into this feeling of possibility of collective action. His election itself, it went beyond politics.
Oh, so?
It felt like a cultural barrier breaking. For millions, it just fundamentally changed the idea of who could lead the country, what America could be. It challenged long-held assumptions.
But he certainly didn't walk into an easy situation.
Not at all. The context is crucial.
Our sources paint a stark picture. The Great Recession hitting hard.
Banks teetering, jobs just evaporating.
Right, and still entangled in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. A really turbulent time.
Immense pressure from day one.
Yet, when you look back at his presidency, there were some major achievements.
Definitely. Despite the headwinds.
The administration seemed focused on, well, stabilizing things, but also making big changes. Domestically, you have to mention the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare.
A huge legislative battle and a huge piece of policy.
Yeah, the sources emphasize how it expanded health insurance to millions. A massive undertaking, fundamentally changing the healthcare landscape, even with all the opposition.
True. And on the world stage.
Several key things stand out. Ordering the raid that killed Osama bin Laden in 2011.
A major national security moment.
And then his support for same-sex marriage rights, pushing environmental protections, signing the Paris Climate Agreement.
Right? Tackling climate change globally. And, let's not forget, the Nobel Peace Prize early on in 2009.
Which was somewhat controversial at the time, coming so early in his term.
It was. But it perhaps signaled the world's hope for his presidency.
Of course, it wasn't smooth sailing. Significant opposition, especially from Congress. Gridlock became a common word.
A very divided government for much of his time.
But through it all, the descriptions we have point to a certain leadership style. Calm, thoughtful, respected internationally, even amidst the domestic fights.
And it's interesting to look at those achievements, healthcare, bin Laden, climate, through the lens of that opposition.
What do you mean?
Well, his ability to get those things done, even partially, despite such fierce political division, it says something about his approach, doesn't it? That calm, maybe pragmatic, persistent style.
Strategic resilience, perhaps.
Maybe that's it. It kind of raises a question, how much does that temperament, that steady focus matter for a leader, especially when things are so polarized?
That's a really important question to ponder. So he serves 2 terms, leaves office in 2017. The sources often mention the grace and dignity of the transition.
A peaceful transfer of power.
But his work didn't start. He and Michelle Obama through the Obama Foundation.
Right, focusing on empowering young leaders around the world, continuing that theme.
And he's become a best-selling author, too. A Promised Land, sharing his own reflections.
Offering his perspective on it all.
So when we try to sum up his legacy, what's the core message from the material we've reviewed?
I think it boils down to something powerful. He didn't just make history by being the first African-American president.
It was more than that.
Yeah, it seems the bigger impact was showing that leadership could be intelligent, yes, but also compassionate, unifying. That qualities like humility, hope, basic humanity, they were out of place in the highest office.
That's well put. And maybe the most enduring reminder from his whole story
Is that your starting point doesn't define your end point.
exactly, that where you begin doesn't have to dictate where you can go.
A powerful message in itself.
So this deep dive, looking at Barack Obama's life, his presidency, it really shows the ripple effect one person's journey can have.
Yeah.
Navigating identity, finding a voice, using it for change.
A remarkable trajectory.
And as you listening reflect on all this, maybe consider this thought. What parts of your own story, your own starting points, might hold untapped potential? What capacity for hope, for action, for overcoming challenges lies within you, ready to make its own impact, big or small?